Hello and welcome to another episode of ZenChats. I'm Zeneca and I'm thrilled to be here with Ryan Carson of Proof and Moonbirds fame, ex-COO. Now you have your own fund, 121G. Want to get into all of it, but before we do, how are you? How's your day going?
I'm doing great. No, this is really fun, Roy. I appreciate you having me on the show and looking forward to talking about NFTs and the industry and all things
All the
like
good
that.
stuff.
Probably my dogs are going to bark a little bit. I'm sorry.
Never apologize for your dog. Great. So yeah, last time we spoke, actually it wasn't on this, it was on my other podcast. You and Kevin Rose were on to chat with me and Jamie about the Moonbirds launch. I think it was just before they were launching, and it feels like a lifetime ago, but it was maybe 2 months ago.
I know, maybe. Yeah, it was April. That was probably April, I don't know, 7th or
Early
something.
April. Yeah, exactly. It's June 7th today. So yeah, so I mean, back then you were gearing up for the launch of Moonbirds. Obviously, Moonbirds, massive success beyond, I think beyond everyone's expectations. I thought it was going to be huge, but
we were blown away.
This is crazy.
It was bonkers. Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason things changed for me too, as well. It was a fascinating thing to live through. But I'm an open book, happy to share.
Yeah, so let's get into it then, because you were the COO of. Was it Proof or Moonbirds or both?
Proof. Yep.
Proof, who obviously Moonbirds was released under Proof. And then sometime a few weeks after launch, time is so weird in this space, but I guess, excuse me, I'm getting a cough. You essentially stepped down, transitioned from that role and sort of pivoted to go full-time on this fund that we're going to get into, which had already been in the works for a while. But why don't you take us through like what happened there?
I don't presume all of your viewers and listeners even know who I am, so I'll just do a 5 sort of second.
Right, sorry, I should have asked. Yeah, I'm just like, everyone knows who Ryan is.
I know, no, you do, and a couple of people do. My mom does.
Yeah, there you
go. Super fast background. So on me, I have been a founder CEO for about 20 years. Started 3 companies. I got a computer science degree at the beginning of all that. So started my life as a software engineer and then became an entrepreneur. And my third company was called Treehouse, which taught students how to code. And, I was passionate about that because I got a computer science degree and then I got a job. And then I realized you don't need this degree. This is like keeping millions of people out of this amazing world of opportunity and wealth, building. And so launched Treehouse to try to change that. Taught 600,000 people how to code. It was most fun work of my life. Anyways, that company got acquired, but Kevin Rose was my first investor. And he and I actually met because my second company was a conference company. We did conferences for Web2. And he was one of my speakers. And we're almost the same exact age, studied computer science, just hit it off and became good friends. And so when Treehouse came out, he said, "Hey, I want to invest in that." And so I was like, wow, okay, that's cool. And so 10 years later, because I ran Treehouse for 10 years, he was starting the Proof podcast. And, we had hung out a lot. We both live in Portland. We're good friends. And he said, "You should listen to this podcast." Mm-hmm. And I was so busy with Web2 that I had heard all this like MetaMask and Ethereum and stuff kind of happening, but I finally listened to his podcast and just got sucked in. And as we all say, kind of down the rabbit hole, red pill, all of it. And when Treehouse was acquired, he said, "Hey man, I'm doing this Proof NFT." And I thought, well, what would be more fun than joining a collective group of NFT, nuts, people who are just passionate about NFTs.
Degens.
Yeah, well, just like, this sounds fun and interesting. And so I just joined as a member. And then he was full-time at True Ventures, so super busy guy. And Justin, the co-founder with Kevin of Proof, was helping him run things, but Justin was kind of tying up things at his old job too. So one day I hit him up. I was like, "Kevin, let me just come in as your CEO and help you boot this thing up. I built a bunch of companies. I'm an adult. Like, let me just help you do this." And he's like, "Let's go." So just joined as the COO.
When in the timeline of that, so they launched in December. When did you come on as COO?
I think it was I think formally my first day was early Feb, but I was doing a lot of the work in Jan.
Yeah.
And I was like, whatever, man, I can sign a contract whenever. Don't worry about it. Let's just rock and roll. So started kind of, I think it was mid-Jan.
Yeah.
And just had a blast building the community. We were in Discord, hanging out, doing voice chats. We started to get people in from Ledger to do like wallet security talks. And it was just such a great community, and is. And then when I said, hey, let me be your COO, it's like, great, let's go. So started to kind of formally help build the company. And then we launched Grails, which was such a fun, crazy project. But Proof was still under the radar. Not many people talked about it. No one really knew about Grails except for a couple people. And then we had that secret code and the autoglyph or the protoglyph.
Yeah, that was wild.
Right, which then kind of raised the profile. People started to hear about Proof more. But we were just kind of quietly building the community and working hard. And then we went to Justin and Kevin and I did an offsite. And, we realized we need to expand this community. It's too expensive to get in. It's too small. Let's protect all the Proof holders and do everything we said we're going to do, but let's expand the community and create a more affordable entry point. And so we thought, let's do a PFP. And then it was so funny because I remember literally talking about all the ideas. And I think it was Justin that said, what about Owl? And I think it was Justin. We were in a van driving to a restaurant. And I think we were like, yeah, owls are cool. And as you know, Owl.
I love owls. Oh, hang on.
You love owls,
yeah.
Right? It's just hard not to love. So, came up with the concept, started to build the idea of how the tokenomics would work and how everything would work and why it would make sense with how would you get access to the Proof community with a Moonbird, like without diluting the value of Proof, and just, thought through those things. But still nobody knew about us really. And the joke inside our Discord was like, nobody knows about, no one's going to care.
Yeah.
And they kept saying, you all need to do marketing, and we just said, don't worry, Kevin's got this secret weapon, his
1.6 million Twitter followers
and his Twitter followers. Yeah. So we're like, don't worry, it's going to be fine. But on the side, like ever since I sold Treehouse, I decided I wanted to start a fund of some sort because I knew how to be an operator. And I thought as an investor, I could actually be good at that and help founders. I could be a good investor. And so, and then Proof happened. And then so on the side, I pinged Kevin. I was like, I'd love to just start a fund on the side. I don't want it to be something too huge, but I think I could be good at it. It'll be NFT focused. Are you cool with that? And he said, yeah, fine. Just let's lay down some ground rules. You can't use your Proof knowledge, unfairly, and don't solicit Proof members to invest. And I was like, cool, great. And then I announced it. I think, I can't remember when it was pre-Moonbirds. And then we just got building and we launched Moonbirds. And you saw the whole thing happen. We talked about it on Two Bored Apes. It turns out there was just this wild amount of interest in the project. It was clear the Dutch auction wasn't going to work. AJ was launching
the Vayner Sports thing.
Vayner Sports, yeah. AJ was launching Vayner Sports, had a huge gas war, and we're like, we can't let that happen. And I, just in case AJ is listening, I don't think it was his fault. I think everybody learned, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, that doesn't work. And so we decided to go to the 2.5 ETH, pre-mint raffle. And we didn't know what was for sure going to happen. And as we all saw, it just, blew everybody away. And I think actually, and I've already, publicly said, I tweeted a couple things that I regret, and one of them was in our Slack, someone posted this graph, and it was something like floor price and time of Moonbirds, Azuki, and like Bored Apes.
Bored Apes, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And the chart blew me away because it was like this meteoric rise of Moonbirds so fast. And I just remember thinking, holy shit, that's crazy. And I should have realized, like, I'm one of the leaders of this project. Like, I just shouldn't ever talk about floor price. Like, it's just bad. But I think being inside of all of it, it was just so overwhelming and crazy and interesting that I thought, oh, I'll just post the graph because this is mind blowing. And I didn't think about how that would be perceived. Like, well, people are going to think that you're comparing yourselves and saying you're better than these projects. And to me, I was just thinking, this is historical and crazy. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
And I didn't attribute the graph, because in our Slack, there was no attribution. And I should have thought, oh, someone made this graph, I should probably attribute them.
Yeah.
Duh. And so post it. And then it was like, everybody hated it, and then I was
you're
like,
under a microscope when you launch a project, when you're a founder or like part of the team, and it's just like in the public eye. It's you got to be
more
really
than I
careful. Yeah.
more than I appreciated, because I've had something like 60,000 followers on Twitter forever, and all of a sudden I gained, I don't know, it was like 30 or 40,000 in a couple of weeks. And so there's all these people that don't know me, they don't know my background, there's no context.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, this guy who was part of the Moonbirds project is posting a graph of why his floor price.
Yeah.
And of course, that was dumb, right? So it's like, oh shit, yeah, that was not smart. So I think I deleted that. At least I hope it did. So just kind of learned, like, you got to be really careful when you're under the microscope and be really thoughtful. Anyway, and then I think as it became clear, Moonbirds is a juggernaut, and therefore Proof is going to be a massive juggernaut. And I think, then I announced, okay, my fund's ready. Here's the page. And again, there was lack of context. I have all these new followers. They're like, what? The leader of this project is launching a VC fund? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And I was thinking, I announced all this and like, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But Twitter is 1 second memory. And I think at that time, Justin and Kevin, I just had a come to Jesus talk. It was like, when I signed up to be COO, I had no idea how big this was going to be. Proof is probably going to be a multi-billion-dollar company, literally. And Proof needs a COO who's built a multi-billion-dollar company. I built, companies worth hundreds of millions, but not billions.
Yeah.
And I think we just all realized, like, we should get the right person in the seat. And it's not me. And I actually want to focus on 121G, my fund, full time. And I don't want to build a multi-billion-dollar company. And there's some other logistical details, like Kevin and Justin were moving to LA. I was going to need to move to LA with them, and I've got a family and all this stuff that I couldn't do that. So it's just like, let's stay friends. Let's part ways, professionally, and I'll just cheer you on as a Proof holder and a Moonbirds holder from the side, and I'll rock and roll my fund, and we'll all stay buds. But it happened fast. It was that decision happened in like a day.
Wow.
And it was like, wow, okay, here we go.
On to the next thing.
That kind of the background and then the context. So
yeah, no, I appreciate you giving all that background and context, and it makes total sense when you think about it, put it that way. I'm glad you sort of mentioned the tweets, because there was a lot of that public just like backlash, I guess. And it's honestly, it's really tough being in the position of a project founder, because no matter what, some people are going to be unhappy, but then everything you say is under a microscope, and especially for Moonbirds, which was just the talk of, I was going to say the month, but then you got dropped other side like 10 days later, and then that took all the focus. What a crazy month April was. And then that was the top. And then we've been in bear market ever since. So stuff happens. Crazy. But yeah, unprecedented. You mentioned it was historic. It really was. The volume that Moonbirds was putting up one day, it overtook the Mutants volume. And then like within like 3 or 4 days, the lifetime secondary market volume for Moonbirds was higher than like Cool Cats. And
isn't that wild?
This project is so wild. It's literally unprecedented. And I was just going like, this is crazy. This is there's going to be like pre-Moonbirds and post-Moonbirds in like the NFT history timeline. And now I think of pre-other side and post-other side, because that's just a whole other story. But anyway, you mentioned actually no, I have a question first. So you said that for Proof they're going to need like a CRO that knows how to scale to multi-billion. Do they have one yet? I haven't been following. Is there someone that they brought on?
Not yet. So Proof is in a massive hiring spree, to deliver all the value that Kevin and Justin have planned. They need a big team. So they announced they were hiring up to 30 people. And I think that they're up to, I think 15 or 16 full-time already. So they've been kind of quiet because hiring people is so hard, and it just takes all your focus, all your time. So they're building a team out. I have a feeling they'll bring on a COO once the company scales more, which is more traditional. You normally don't have a COO right out of the gate. But I believe deeply in Kevin and Justin and the team. You know, you have folks like Stevie and Soda Pop and Ryan, who's leading engineering. Like, these are good, experienced, high quality people. And so I'm going to, keep believing in the Proof ecosystem wholeheartedly.
Yeah, there's very few projects I believe in more than Proof and Moonbirds. It's just clear. I said this before the mint as well, like before Moonbirds rather. I mean, I'm kicking myself for missing the Proof mint, but that's another story as well. But
you got
Moonbirds, people
eventually.
Yeah, I eventually got in, and I'm obviously very grateful and blessed to be in a position to have bought in when I did. But prior to Moonbirds, people would ask me like, "What do you think of the mints coming up 2.5 ETH? It's a lot." And I was like, I have literally never been more bullish on a project pre-mint than this one. And then people would ask, where do you think secondary is going to end up price wise? And like, when are you going to start buying? And I was like, I think it'll probably be like between the 5 to 8 ETH range, that's probably where it'll settle. And it did for a while, but then it just rocketed to like 40.
Yeah.
And then obviously dropped a lot like 20, 25, which is in the bear market held up really, really well.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see it. I mean, the whole nesting mechanic is fascinating too, because it's really limited, listings. I think something like 80 Moonbirds were listed.
Yeah.
Recently.
Out of 10,000.
Yeah. So it's, and what's interesting is I'm in all these private chats with a bunch of Moonbird holders, and people are starting to say, hey, here's one Moonbird I want to sell, but I don't want to unnest it yet. Does anybody interested in potentially buying it? Then I'll unnest it. So it really slows down secondary a lot, which is fascinating. And then one other point wanted to clarify, just, it doesn't hurt to say these things too many times. I told everybody in Proof and on Twitter, like, hey, I'm going to buy into Moonbirds heavy, right? So be prepared. And I want to be public about exactly what I'm doing, so I'm not accused of doing shady stuff, because in my mind, I was like, a project creator who's buying heavily into secondary is always a good sign. I mean, it means you believe in the project, right? As long as you're not trading on knowledge that's not
inside
public
information. Yeah.
So I said, I'm gonna, spend 165 ETH, and I'm gonna aim for 2 or 3 rares and the rest floor, and I'm just gonna try to buy, but I'm not gonna buy any rares until rarity is public knowledge, because I did know the rarity.
Yeah.
And so waited, like, I think it was almost 2 or 3 hours afterwards, and we saw these rare birds getting sold. There's a glitch got sold for like 10 ETH.
Yeah.
I was using a Trait Sniper, and I was like, oh man, this is brutal. but I'm not gonna do the wrong thing. So then finally bought in a couple rares 2 or 3 hours in, and then the rest of my birds I got around 9 ETH. So I just want to clarify what happened.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought it up, because there was a bit of, I guess, controversy around that as well. But if I remember, there was like an internal policy at Proof where like you're not allowed to trade for a little period, and then
Kevin. Right? Kevin and we all agreed, like, it would be literally immoral to know the rarity and buy.
Right. Yeah, that's clearly like
that's just wrong. And so we all agreed on that. And then I also didn't want to. I mean, I strongly believe the floor was going to go quickly up to like 8 or 9 ETH, and I just didn't feel right about being a founder of the project and seeing people buy 2 seconds after mint.
Right.
It's like, that's just not right. So anyway, just wanted to clarify what's going on with my Moonbirds.
Yeah. And all right, let's get to the 121G fund, because that's what you're spending most of your time on now. What is it? Like, just big picture.
What is happening?
I know what it is, but
I'll walk you through it.
Walk us through it. Everything.
Okay. So the theory was, all right, now is that, I mean, I still think we're early. I still think we're in absolute pre-beginner phase with Web3. So I thought, the most amazing place to deploy capital would be NFTs right now. I mean, I was inside of what turned out to be one of the world's biggest projects. So I know how to operate, a big project. I know what it takes. I know what kind of team you need. I have all this operational experience as a CEO founder. Like, it would be so fun to raise capital and then buy NFTs from projects I truly believe in and hold them. And so basically set up a rolling fund and angel list, which is a 506c, so I can talk about it publicly. And then just told everyone, hey, I'm going to raise some money. I only have 100 spots, let's go. And was just blown away. The fund was fully subscribed and was up to $40 million in like 7 days. This was the perfect time to raise money. And then essentially the plan is very straightforward. It's like, all right, we're going to have somewhere between 10 and 14,000 ETH, and I'm going to deploy it in 3 different ways. The largest bucket, I'm calling them pillars. So pillar 1 is about 55% of the capital, is going to be deployed on about 12 new projects. And it's about 400 to 600 ETH per project. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually launch a podcast, probably called 121G podcast, something really creative.
Yeah.
And I'm going to interview.
Where does that come from? Sorry. Why 121?
Oh, yeah. What is this about?
121G?
All right. Yeah. So if you're listening to this, you can't see, but in my background, I have all these Back to the Future paraphernalia. Right, so I love the film Back to the Future. I'm old enough that it came out at a formative time in my life. So I've always loved the film. So I thought, if I'm going to do a fund, I should name it something that I just think is fun and interesting. Yeah. So obviously a lot about Star Wars, Back to the Future, Goonies, all these kind of movies that I love. And then I thought, the flux capacitor is interesting, which is this little toy behind me. And then I was like, 1.21 gigawatts is like a fun phrase, and it's hilarious because Doc Brown says, 1.21 gigawatts. And I was like, that's fun, but then that's a lot to say. And then my friend was like, then you can call it 121G. And I was like, that's cool. And then my wife said, but then you could say it's the fund you wish you could go back in time and invest in. I was like,
that's the marketing right there. Yeah.
Isn't that fun? So anyway, I just thought, let's call it that. And so 121G is 1.21 gigawatts. And so then the idea is we're going to get all this capital, and then I'm going to use the podcast to identify potential high quality founders. And I'm only going to invest in fully doxed founders with real experience inside of not large companies, but real companies that have shipped product. And then I'm going to have a Zoom call with them, either the podcast interview or a private Zoom call, to vet them. And then if the project is minting in the future, then what I'm going to do is have that 400 to 600 ETH ready. And then the secondary opens, we're going to sweep. Yeah. And then hold. And then I'm going to meet with the founders every month to support them, help them, hold them accountable. And then the hope is to hold those for the life of the fund, which is 4 years. And then at the end, we don't want to have to liquidate, because that you have to do it really carefully and thoughtfully. How would you do that?
NFTs are really interesting like that. Yeah.
Right. And these are not stocks, which you can, sell. Yeah. So we're hoping to fractionalize the fund and then sell the fractions. So all the, it's almost like going public. So that's the plan. And I'll tell you, I've had some fascinating meetings already with potential projects. Really, it's so far from what we're seeing with Freemint CC0. Yeah. It's fascinating.
It's amazing. Yeah.
And what's going to happen to that? Like, how many projects are we going to miss out on because we're not willing to invest in anonymous founders? I don't know, but we're going to find out.
So you said the 3 pillars, I think, and this was the main one. What are the other 2 areas?
So 55% of the capital is going to pillar 1, new projects, docs founders with strong operational history. Then pillar 2 is one of ones from the world's best artists. So what I'm planning on doing, I've got 5 artists identified, and I'm having meetings with them and asking them if they have any unreleased one of ones that the world hasn't seen. And then what the fund is going to do is acquire them and hold them. And then I just think, I mean, I saw you interviewed Amber, Vittoria, and I think there's so many amazing artists, and I believe their work is amazing, and also it's going to be very valuable, you know, and it's everything that's not Goblin Town, right? It's like great art. And I think you own some Goblin Town, so
I do. I think the Goblin Town art is good. It's like, it's hard to draw ugly well, is what I say.
True.
It's not pretty. It's not beautiful art, but it's like
good.
It's well made. Yeah. I can't say the same for most of like the derivatives and the other random projects that are launched, but which
are terrible. But anyway, one of one artists, that's about 15% of the fund. And then the idea is at the end we have a gala, and we release this amazing vault of one of ones that the world has really never seen. I mean, they'll be on the blockchain, so you'll see them, but we'll have a big exciting auction at the end of the fund. And then the third pillar is heavy on proof. I mean, I deeply believe in proof. I know the team very well. I mean, I like you said, I've never believed in a project more. So planning on deploying capital. Now there's some things that I have to navigate from a compliance perspective here. And this is my thinking live, is that I actually need to not own any NFTs personally. If although legally I could own Moonbirds and proof passes and still have the fund buy,
it's very tricky, isn't it?
It could be very easily perceived as, you know, benefiting me by increasing the floor, and I don't want any shadiness or appearance of shadiness at all. So I may have to sell my entire portfolio and before the fund buys anything, because I don't want there to be any belief that I'm trying to benefit myself personally. So
that makes a lot of sense, actually.
So that's the theory. Now, I'm sure, like Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan to get punched in the face, right? So well, it's subject to change, right? So
of course. I'm fascinated, just I guess, because I've sort of been thinking through. I've been talking to so many lawyers and accountants in the last few months of creating a DAO, like the 333. Do you want to have a DAO and like all that kind of stuff, and funds, and people in the 333 are like, let's pull our money together and buy some art together. I was like, I love this idea, but figuring out tax and the legal, it's not
murky waters.
Easy. Yeah. So if you can share, like, what's your structure? It's all set up in the US? Is that right?
Yeah. So, and I know you're from Australia, right?
From Australia, living in Germany.
Okay, so so you have probably interesting like citizenship things to think about, or location wise,
it's a mess.
Oh my
God. We're thinking of moving to Dubai now.
Well, that would be straightforward, right?
Yeah, it's straightforward, isn't it?
Holy shit, I know, because I lived in England for 12 years, and my family are my wife's British and my kids have British passports, so there's like some tax complexity there we have to think about, and so I'm trying to be as I want to be black and white with the way that the fund is set up, and I want to be way above legally compliant, and so we're sticking with a traditional venture capital fund run by AngelList, and it's essentially it's structured like all venture funds, which turns out most of them are LLCs in America. So you have a Delaware LLC as the master, and then you have all these limited partnerships that spin off it, and each fund is a limited partnership, and you can only have 100 accredited investors. That's super serious, and then you can have up to 2,000 qualified purchasers, which are like larger investors. And but we're just basically sticking to 100 accredited investors because I just have a feel. I mean, I think all of us saw what happened in Nate Chastain, and all of us are going, we knew this was serious, but I mean, he just got arrested by the FBI, and not charged, not convicted, but charged. And I met with Nate. I had lunch with him, and I heard his side of the story, and I don't think he's being given a fair shake publicly. I
Yeah.
don't think people really understand what happened there, but it looked bad.
Yeah, it looked awful. I agree with you. I've spoken to him, not personally, but just like chatted on DMs and stuff. And yeah, to me, it was more, and I'm not like excusing what he did. It was clearly wrong, but it was like negligence and ignorance more than like malice and trying to, yeah.
But it shows you like how, I mean, we could do, I mean, because he was basically like, hey, I like this artist. Of course, I'm going to feature him on the homepage. Of course, I own their art. Like all the things you go, well, yeah, of course. And you realize, well, I mean, that could easily be perceived as,
right,
you know, insider trading, and like, just don't do
when
it.
it came to the selling part, I think that's obviously where it's, yeah.
Bad.
But yeah, I mean, the punishment doesn't seem like it's to fit the crime. Like,
yeah. I mean, I heard you and Carly talking about this.
Right.
Saying,
yeah.
You know, what, yeah, like 40 years?
Even if he gets fined, I think that's still crazy. It's
I mean, and we know there's people doing worse stuff. Like
way worse.
Yeah, I've seen it and not participating in it, but it's like, I'm pretty sure I can see things going on. I'm like, this is bad, you know?
Yeah.
So 121G is like, you know, we're like goody two shoes, doing everything 110% legally. It's like, yeah, we're being really careful.
Yeah. So you've got your 100 accredited investors. You're ready to go, basically. Do you have sort of a time that you're going to start buying?
Yeah, almost. So it's kind of funny timing, haha, in the sense of like, I don't know what else to do but laugh. So I secured all my investors before the market crashed.
Right. Yeah.
So I think a few are going to drop out.
Yeah.
So I think I'll have a few spots open up, and I'll tweet about it. If you know, when that happens, but it looks like we're going to be able to start deploying capital in July. So
nice.
that's the hope.
That's soon. Yeah. I mean, it's June right now.
I know. Yeah. So we'll see. And, you know, I have some ideas of what we'll deploy capital into first, but I need to kind of, like I was telling you before the call, is getting our Ledger Enterprise wallet set up.
Yeah.
There's like a huge amount of like logistics you got to do to get the stuff going.
Yeah. It's not straightforward, but yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, well, I mean, our wallets are going to be public, right? We're not going to hide anything. So if people want to copy trade, great. I mean, you know, we're going to be long-term, high-quality holders. Like that's it. We're not going to be trading in and out of projects, and we'll move a little slower because of that. But I'd rather invest in you know, hardcore, serious, long-term project builders that are fully doxed and I can meet. I mean, like the fact that we don't have like Zoom calls with people before we deploy, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars into their project just blows my mind.
It's all so crazy. It's just this space is so this whole free meta. It's basically like when the market crashed, basically in early May, everything went to crap, and then there was like sentiment was low, and it was like the blue chips were kind of doing okay. People were like, there was a flight to quality, and people were a little hesitant, and then like, of the new projects that were minting, people were like really scrutinizing them and like, all right, if I'm going to part with my hard-earned money, I'm going to really want to make sure our docs team, the Azuki stuff came out. People were like really wary of Anon founders. And so that was happening. And so people weren't minting random projects, but then these free mints came out and they're like, well, if it's free, I'm going to mint. And then why not? And then all of a sudden the secondary market, and now people aren't minting, but they're paying 0.3, 0.5, 5 ETH for Goblin on secondary. And it's like,
I know.
It's all so crazy. It's just,
it is. So I know we're almost out of time, but where do you think this is going in like the next 3 months? You know, you've got these established blue chips, you've got new projects, and then you have this free mint, you know, CC0 just stuff. Well, how do you think it's going to shake out?
I think that the free mint CC0 thing is not sustainable for very long. Like there's so many projects, like real builders who've been working, they spend months and months and put 100,000 plus of their own money into a project. And then for it to be a free mint, it's such a huge risk. And the sort of the payoff is not quite there. I think people are enjoying it. It's fun. It's like, it's just like this fun me. I think that's why Goblins took off, because the market was so depressed. And then this stupid fun project comes out. It's free. And they're in these spaces making goblin noises, and people are just memeing around and having fun. And then now there's like all these just literally shitty projects that are out that are taken off. The way I see it, I think after NFT NYC, it's like this whole free mint period is going to end. People are going to get really excited, meeting in real life, really just have met all these people and these communities that they've been a part of. And I see like July onwards being like a reinvigorated market. Maybe, I mean, it all depends on macro. Like NFT is still very closely tied to ETH and Bitcoin and, you know, inflation and everything else. But I don't see the free mint thing lasting very long. I do think longer term, we are going to see a flight to quality, a flight to doxed founders and projects. And at least I hope so. It's like Azuki was really a turning point in my mind.
It was. And I think people are, oh yeah, even the projects we thought were quality. If you don't know who the founders are, you don't know. I mean, I think it just, the space is going to mature. It just has to, right? You know, people aren't buying stocks. You know, there's a reason why there's penny stocks and then there's the NASDAQ. Like, and all serious investors buy on the NASDAQ because you're not going to buy crap companies that you don't know anything about. So we'll see that happen. I mean, the meetings I'm having with these projects that are going to mint in the next 2-3 months, the quality is unbelievable. The teams are off the charts. Like these are real founders building businesses. And I said this in a kind of a tweet thread, but actually a lot we're talking about flow, which blew my mind.
I've been hearing that as well.
Yeah. Like, you know, no one talks about flow and proof, you know, in any of my circles, but yet, yeah, I think it was 3 out of the 4 projects that I talked to were minting on flow first.
Yeah.
You know, all because it's good for, you know, new folks to come on the chain. There's a lot of interesting game dynamics. And I think we're going to see just a huge entrance from A-list celebrities with huge communities that are going to be true NFT first. And they'll create these communities like Proof. They're verticalized, hyper specialized, very passionate, and then they'll layer PFPs on top of it. They'll literally follow the Proof Moonbird playbook, and I think there could be thousands of them. So
yeah, I think so. I think we barely scratched the surface. I think so. Yeah.
I hope so.
I hope so too. All right. So we're nearing to an end, and I mean, I could talk to you for hours and hours. Just
this is fun.
It's fascinating. It is fun. Is there anything we haven't touched on you want to mention before we do wrap up?
No, this has been a blast. I appreciate you having me on. It's a real honor.
Amazing. Well, no, I appreciate you being here. Is there a place that you'd like people to go to follow you or the fund or anything?
I've been doxxed for 16 years on Twitter, so just Ryan Carson anywhere on the web. I'm just Ryan Carson, RyanCarson.com. You know, at Ryan Carson on Twitter, and then the fund address is 121g.fund.
Amazing. Well, we'll have links to all of those in the description below. Thank you so much, Ryan. This is a pleasure as always. We'll have to get you back on in a few months, 6 months, to see how the fund's doing and what you've invested in. And yeah, I think people will be copy trading a bit.
Probably. All right. Thanks, Roy. Really appreciate it.
All right.